Hi, and welcome to Habits for Humans, the podcast that explores what makes people tick and how to program this brain of ours to do what we actually want it to do. I'm your host, Kim Flynn, and today we're going to talk to Laura Cragan. We're going to talk about her story of hitting diet rock bottom. She hadn't completely let go of wanting to lose weight. She wasn't ready to take the leap forwards, going away from diet culture. And I know many of you listening understand that space. We know diets are not good for us. We know the mental and the physical damage that dieting and again does to our emotional state and to our bodies as well. She knew that that wasn't good. She wanted to get away from that, but she had a really tough time putting trust in something bigger than her. And so she's going to take us through her journey of how she went from stuck in diet culture, like most of us are, and went from that to trusting something outside of herself, trusting a higher power. Her big message is kind of like if you've read the book Women, Food, and God, I would highly recommend. But she talks about that God piece, and whether you call that God, whether you call it higher power, spirit, universe, I call it life, whatever that higher force is for you. We're going to talk to Laura about how she connected with that as a way to get out of that diet drama that's in her head. And I love this phrase. She said, higher power isn't trying to punish you. It's just leading you to see the truth. So I can't wait to get into the content with Laura. And we have a free giveaway for our listeners at the end. We actually have several free giveaways. So stay tuned all the way to the end if you like free stuff. First of all, a word from our sponsors. Habit for Humans is brought to you by Card Salad, a health and wellness company that teaches you how to program your brain using systems and habits. So you know how everyone wants to eat healthy, but it takes so long to meal plan and to go grocery shopping for actual meals. And it's so much easier just to pull the chicken nuggets and the mac and cheese out of the pantry or out of the freezer when you don't take the time to meal plan. So instead of beating yourself up for not meal planning, let us do it for you. Meal planning done for you. I created a product called Eat Well through the company Card Salad. It's a done for you meal planning system. It comes with a menu board you hang on your fridge. It's pretty. Your kids always know what's for dinner. And there's little recipe cards that go on the menu board. And stay tuned to the end of this podcast for a free week of meal planning done for you so you can take the program for a spin. If you are a highly organized person, you will love this program. So I'm excited to introduce Laura to everyone. Laura is an intuitive eating and spiritual life coach. She is a mom of 3. She says she's a fire wife. I want to hear what fire wife is. I don't know if that's a typo or if you actually meant fire wife. That's awesome. She was born and raised in Arizona, but she's currently living in Utah. And Laura helps women ditch diets and find body acceptance through intuitive eating, mindset overhaul, and connecting to spirituality. She encourages women to stop the war with their bodies. Just breathe that in for a second. What would it be like to stop the war with your body so that you can find more purpose in life beyond your body? So welcome, Laura. And then what is a fire wife?
Yes, it's being a wife to a firefighter. Paramedic is my husband, and he works for the station. And I like to claim that title in some sort of way because it's taken a lot out of me over the years, and especially with COVID, he has had to take so much extra work, and we are trying to help out through this pandemic together. I stay home with the
That
kids.
makes sense. So that I love that. You are a fire wife and that is an honor that you have earned that title. I like that. I was
Right.
thinking it was like, okay, is she really spicy or is she a Sagittarius? What are we talking here? Awesome. All right. So Laura, we always start with your number one habit to manage your own mental wellness. And you mentioned holy time. I love that phrase, holy time. Will you walk us through what holy time looks like for you?
Yes, so of course, ideally, we all want to get up early. And for me, with I have younger children, I try and get up earlier and have that time just for me. And it could look like 15 minutes one day, an hour another day. But I like to have it be 3 things of the meditation, prayer, and some study. And I guess a fourth thing of some journaling in there too, where I write down the things I've learned through that prayer or that meditation time. Just any thoughts that arise, I just bullet journal down quickly of what is really surfacing for me. And I need to connect with my higher power every day. I believe in God, and um, that time to really recalibrate my mind. It's the best in the morning. And with studying, doing my scripture study, for anyone, I think as long as you're reading something that's uplifting for you, whether that be some sort of blog that is about self improvement or it is any other book of scripture that you love. I think we need to be learners throughout our life. And so that really helps create a foundation for my day to then be able to serve everyone else after I've served myself.
Do you know, I was just on a podcast a couple days ago with a woman named Carmen, and she talked about journaling as well. And she said that she actually goes back and reads her journal as her own form of scripture. Is that the
Oh, yes.
coolest? Like, if
Mhm.
you're writing down every day at that 4th step, everything that you learned from your meditation, prayer, and scripture study, how cool is it that you then go back and learn from your own experience? I just love that. Anyway, let's dive in. Let's talk about how you overcame diet culture. Take us on your journey.
Right. So, kind of two parts for what's happened with me. I didn't know I was sick with my relationship with my body and food because it manifested in the form of severe depression and suicide ideation. And it was not too long ago, about a couple years ago, where I became the lowest I've ever gotten before. I've always struggled with postpartum depression, but with my husband working so much and having little kids, and I actually don't have family support around me with three little kids, and my husband being such a firefighter with all that time it takes. And I was strictly at home. I didn't have my own thing I did, and I am very much a giver. And I got to the point where I was very mentally sick, and I had taken depression. Taken antidepressants on and off for years, and I think at that point I'd been taking the same one for 4 years. And I think just that the whole leveling up with 2020 of everyone and all that they've gone through, I felt those effects as well. And it got really scary with me. And um, I found myself one day very suicidal, and I had to be admitted to a psych ward. So I was there for that week in the psych ward. Very scary situation, and um, very and there was not no going back there. There was definitely more I needed to help me with. And then a couple months later, I had to go to a treatment center for a whole month because it was not getting better. And the doctors had told me I need to switch medicine. I need some more help. And I went, and with all the different episodes I would have, and being very depressed and wanting to live, I found myself then realizing I need to get some more help, especially with little kids, to be away for a whole month, to really work on myself, get therapy, and be in a place where I'm safe. And it was really hard on our marriage as well. Um, but then, so that's that first part. When I came out of there, I did start to feel so much better. I got into a medication that really helped me, but I have of course had a lot of traumas from my past, my childhood. I needed to get over, and definitely with all those boundaries, I just always let people step on with, I give so much and I don't give enough to myself. Um, and just, I think I really did feel like I had curated demons after me. And that's a whole different topic. But that second part of it all is I came out of there and felt a lot better. Of course, I still needed to be very gentle with myself. I wasn't working at the time. I let go of all of my responsibilities, my husband, my ward, and my people around me. In my neighborhood, they helped me out a lot, and they were so kind, and everyone was really trying to watch out for me. And I slowly got better where I could take care of myself and my family. So that was really a big part of them helping me.
Um, wow. First of all, thank you for going there. Thank you for sharing your real experience. 2020 was real. It took a real hit. And there's something about, it makes me like choke up just hearing your story. There's something about hearing, and I'm crying right now. That's lovely. Hearing other people that are struggling post 2020 and just sharing that, yes, it's hard, instead of going to Instagram and seeing how beautiful everyone's lives are. And we're like, oh, I'm still struggling 2 years later. But this is the reality today. And thank you so much for sharing. Would you mind if I go deeper down this road with you for just a second?
Mhm.
Um, will you talk to me or us about what suicide ideation looks like or sounds like in your head? So we hear this phrase always thrown out. And I don't think for those of us who don't traditionally struggle with depression or haven't struggled with suicide ideation, I don't know what that looks like or sounds like or feels like. Would you explain that to us?
Right. Well, of course, the easy answer is to say no will to want to live. Um, I I felt like my brain, I was trapped in my brain, in my body, and I did feel those constant feelings and phrases going through my mind that you're not enough, you're not worth it. Why would anybody care? Why even try? And for me to be, and then if you do want to be more vulnerable, like I wanted to throw myself on traffic. I wanted to go grab the knives and do something about it. And I will say, with I didn't do any of the cutting. I didn't do any of the grabbing the pills and having those episodes. I knew I was trying to be so strong for so long, but with my faith, I don't buffer very much. I don't buffer. I went to a rehab for people that actually had a lot of drug addictions and alcoholism. And I don't buffer to that point, but it was getting to that point where I wanted to actually end my life because I had no my I don't buffer in those ways. And so with this part, I knew it was just a matter of time where I would snap, and it just wasn't even going to be a will of forcing my will upon it. And um wanting to grab the pills in the closet, it would probably just I would be out of my mind and I couldn't be able to do or know what I was really doing. And I would have those panic attacks and I would rampage through my house and throw things around. And it was very scary. And it was really dark. And there was definitely some different powers I was struggling with and with where I came from with growing up with a broken household and um having to, as I'll talk about with my second part, being really at war with my body. I couldn't even go there yet. I was in survival mode. I couldn't even realize, oh, it's probably because I'm really strict with myself and my body and the way I look. And growing up someone that was pretty, wanted to stay pretty, and going through the kids go having kids, it's hard. And my husband is actually a personal trainer on the side, or was. He stopped since now I'm working more, and he actually takes care of himself very very well and is very fit, and I'm very glad for that being a firefighter. But I compared myself to him for years. We had a very meshed relationship because we didn't have family nearby, but it became not very healthy and can be very toxic at sometimes. But we've worked through so much, and we had to, or things weren't going to go well and we were going to have to separate. We really considered that. So it was a combination of all those things that really made it really hard on me with my thoughts.
It's so interesting how sometimes life it seems to hand us things that will absolutely take us to that edge. And thank you so much for sharing what it's like to feel like it's you're out of control. And um, you tear up at that moment when you talk about rampaging through your house because I can only imagine like you must feel like who am I? I'm out of control and I can't fix this. I can't just muscle up and make this go away. I really appreciate that you talk about buffering, like the people that you went to therapy with were buffering, and I like that phrase through drugs or whatever else. Do you feel like you were buffering through controlling your physical body? Do you feel like you were buffering through trying to be more and more and more beautiful?
Right. Yes, that was my buffer. And of course, the buffer of putting myself down and the buffer of perfectionism. But yeah, so that second part with after finally being in less of a survival mode, I was starting to see clearly that I definitely, and they only slightly mentioned it in my month long program, that concept, but they weren't a eating disorder clinic. And I just wasn't ready at that time. It's so cool how you're only ready, your higher spiritual power only gives you what you're ready for. And at that time I wasn't ready because I still needed to go through even just my marriage stuff. And but once I was able to see clearly, I realized I buffered. And I'd say it went in these three layers. I first had the body dysmorphia. That's where it always starts. Everyone starts with body dysmorphia.
Will you talk to us more about that?
Yes, it really, looking in the mirror, or this perception is, it's distorted of what you see and what the reality is. And some people may do it and not even be that overweight and doesn't even matter. They just see that they are unclean of what they've been putting in their body. They need to cleanse themselves. They are unhealthy and they've caused certain disorders to themselves, or they have extra pockets of themselves, their body around them that they feel like is wrong, and it becomes more of an identity that they are wrong, and that's, yeah, it's the body dysmorphia.
I love I love the definition of that is my body is wrong. And that's the definition. If we're
Mhm,
feeling like our body is wrong, we're struggling with body dysmorphia. I love that. Keep
mhm.
going. So that's the first thing.
And then the next was the orthorexia. And for definitely, you probably need to know this meaning because it is a newer term. Orthorexia, meaning you are religiously clean eating. And I kind of term it sometimes as the OCD of eating clean and being healthy. And to then even step further, ortho, when you're orthodox in your religion, you're very straight laced. You really are. You're very strict, and so you're very ortho. You're very strict with the way you eat. You're not anorexic. You can be. It can be that that third tier I'm going to talk about for me. With I didn't swing the anorexia way. I went to the binge eating route, but I did raw veganism. I did dairy free. My baby was dairy allergic when I was nursing her for a while, and that definitely you know, caused some ripple effects because I saw how much weight I lost. And I started to believe that I was going to feel better, be better the more I eliminated from my diet. And I did without meat for a long time. I did juicing. I did 21-day fix. I did all these things over all these years to
That
just
was
get health.
your drug, right? Like all
Mhm.
the clean eating that was your heroin, that was your meth, that was your cocaine.
Right. And the exercising as well too. I did marathons and half marathons, and I work out an hour a day. I'd go to the gym and go to those classes. I'd even just work out at home, which is all good, but it crosses that line. If it was I was so tired at night from nursing or from just having a whole panic attack the night before, and your eyes get all puffy and you just can't even think straight the next day. But I have to get in that workout. If I don't get that hit of dopamine, which is really the same thing as with drugs and alcohol, and even the thoughts and comments I'd get from my husband or from thinking what other people would think of me, and the things that they would say, and friendships that probably were not very positive for me at that time.
That makes sense. Thank you again for sharing. So vulnerable. Okay, so your spiritual power only gives you what you can take at the moment, and you kind of had to go through a series of doors opening to say, "Oh, there's more here. Oh, there's more here," is what I'm hearing. So the first door again was body dysmorphia, and then again, love your definition of that. My body is wrong. The second thing was orthorexia. You used all of these diet principles as your heroine,
Mhm.
if I
It
may.
was
What was the next door?
it was the binge eating, and it really is. It's it's actually when you think about it, when I think about it in the past, it was a beautiful sign to my body trying to help me. I would binge 2 to 3 times a week, usually when my husband was gone on those shifts. And I was all alone for that long amount of time and so overwhelmed with the kids. And I had probably gone through a whole week of trying to eat no sugar or whatever it was for the week after weighing myself, all these things, but it would snap. And I could tell that I was undernourished and I needed that time to and I would just scoop peanut butter scoops over and over, almost finish a jar. I would then I needed something crunchy, just eat all the chips that I could find in that bag. And then I'd feel really bad. And I started researching about throwing up. And and my husband caught me and found the websites of that, how I can actually get that done. I hadn't done it yet, but it's these layers. That's how it goes. It's the body dysmorphia. You pendulum swing one way with the orthorexia being so strict, and I swung the other way being I had to binge, but my body was telling me I needed those calories. And I was pregnant at one time and doing all these things and being strict, and I am so grateful because I needed to nourish my baby.
Wow, really beautiful. That's the best I've ever heard described binge eating. It's a beautiful sign. This is what you said. It's a beautiful sign that your body is trying to help you. That's really
Right.
powerful. So it shows how far you swung on one side. If you are out of control, blackout binge eating over here, it shows how far you've swung over here in just being vigilant and so strict with your body. So,
Right.
so what,
And
how did, go ahead.
one thing I'd like to say, it's not just that you are the person that was eating so strict all the time. It's also maybe you've gotten to the point, and a lot of people struggle with binge eating, not just because they're always being vigilant, but that they just don't have that self care. Sometimes I don't like to throw out that word self care because it
Mhm.
means people think it means bubble baths, but it's just
Yes.
you aren't putting in your boundaries. You aren't having things that fulfill you. You're not having creativity in your life. Your relationships are struggling, and you need to care for that part instead of binging.
I love that definition of self-care, things that fulfill you, relationships that fulfill you. It's beyond bubble bath. I like that a lot. So how did you start to pull out? I know you were, so you're in this treatment program for 30 days. Was it just the constant self-care that you got to experience there? What helped you turn things around?
Well, when I went there, I decided I was going to do the outpatient program. The inpatient was quite a bit on my family. We had to recover for several months after that, for me being gone, and my kids are young. But I did do an outpatient program. It ended up being about 20 hours a week, where 3 days a week I go in for group therapy for a couple hours in the teaching sessions. And then we have the last hour, we have our big dinner together. And they are pre plating, and they kind of are in the same room as you, not necessarily watching over you, but they log what you don't eat or what you are throwing away. And you have to stay there, they may even a half hour after, for those that suffer from the bulimia. And for me, I wasn't that case, but it felt really weird to be, I'm this client that has to be treated that way, and I of course chose to go on those days, but I they weren't going to leave me alone, knowing until I've actually healed. And I would have therapy individually every week and the dietitian every week, and I'd be weighed and make sure I was on track. But it was all very beautiful to have a group help me, and we all were going through it together.
I like that you said it was so strange to realize, oh, this is where I'm at. Like everyone's monitoring my food and recognize, oh, like this is me. I need this help. How surprising
Right.
that is to humans in general when we're like, oh, here I am. I didn't expect this.
Right.
What about the group was helpful to you? Is it seeing other people that are struggling around next to you that are struggling the same thing? What's helpful about the group?
It felt good that there was that solidarity, that they understood what I was going through. And some of them had already been down a little further than on the path than me. And they had actually been doing before they have to go in their steps, if they actually lived there full time at that place. And I didn't go there full time before. I went to another place, and it wasn't eating disorder related, but they gave me a lot of insight, and we just understood all the same things, a lot of the same thing. We've all had a lot of probably childhood traumas. With a lot of the girls there had a lot of troubles with men in their life. That was a very common underlying thing with them, and the patriarchy, they felt like it was hard on them, and they definitely had a lot of things to deal with. And I was able to then help in my own sphere back at them, because I was one of more of the older ones. A lot of them were younger. I had some 16-year-olds, I had a 40-year-old, I had a 25-year-olds. It was majority the younger, and we just all are going through the same thing. We all are victims of the diet culture.
I like that definition of what's the quote? The greatest human need is not to be loved, but to be understood. And it feels like that's what really helped you. You were around these people that understood what it is that you were going through. So how did you start to dig yourself out? And is that what it felt like, digging yourself out?
Yeah. It honestly, I am so grateful for how much quicker it was compared to most, because I had already gone through a lot in the past with that past program. And then it took about 2 months, and they felt like I was doing well, and I did too. And it's a mutual thing, there's that trust where they're going to trust you. I'm trusting myself that I can then go forward. And I just I didn't really have any lingering past of, I wanted to go back. I wanted to lose the weight. Or at least sometimes in certain seasons or things arrive and outfits or whatever I'd see. but I just knew I never can go back to that. And I think that's what's hard for some that do struggle with eating disorders. They still, um, that's grief and loss over that past body they had, even the past connections they've had with people they would diet with, go to the gym with, those outfits they see in their closet. For me, I just had gotten so low with suicidal ideation that it wasn't worth it to me. And I felt my God's love, that He was guiding me on another path. Obviously, as I realized there was these many doors that kept opening, and I partly, I should say, with intuitive eating, before signed up for the eating disorder clinic, I knew something was wrong. I knew I was still feeling a lot of severe depression. It was only a matter of time before I was going to go back to more of the suicidal thoughts. And I had read the book Intuitive Eating actually years before, about 4 or 5 years before, because before I was a weight loss coach, and I would help women in that way. And of course, that concept was around in the whole world of health, and I thought this is so interesting. I'm going to read it, and I loved it, but I was not ready for it. But I thought, oh, I'm
Mm.
going to do this. I'm totally going to do this. 2 weeks after, I totally forgot about it. I was not ready to let go of what other people thought of me and what I was going to be. I thought it was healthy because it's very traditional. If you lose weight, if you do these things, if you eat clean, that's gonna be happiness, and also gives you status. It gives you love and all these things. And it's hard to jump into this unknown. And so I when I so back to when I was noticing I needed some extra help, or I noticed that something was wrong, and it was just a matter of time. And the thought just kept coming to me. And I believe it's the spirit just saying to me over and over again, it would not leave me alone. You need to reread that book. You need to go back to those principles. Maybe not read it, just revisit that, get some help. And when I looked through it, thumbed through it again, didn't necessarily read through it because it's kind of a big book, but it has 10 principles to it, and they're beautiful. And it starts with rejecting diet culture as number one, and all the way through to the end of gentle nutrition. It really still talks about helping yourself have gentle nutrition. But I just knew at this point, and I've seen the power of getting help, and with just being more gentle with myself, that I needed to go and get some more help. And I wasn't going to be able to do it by myself, especially with living in a household where we were so much into diet culture. Um, and I had already met my out of pocket. So I'm like, I really need this extra help. And someone that was more vulnerable like me, that assessment they gave me, they knew right away. They're like, yeah, you need help. So, yep.
Interesting. You talked about you have to have some grief and loss over. Is it the grief and loss over the body you used to have, or is it grief and loss over holding on to dieting as that heroine? What's the grief and loss over?
Oh, yes. Those are definitely two of them. Over what you looked like, and the compliments and the feeling that you would have if you were going to fit in that dress, if you were going to be going swimming. And then, yes, as a buffer, it's actually your hobby. It's a thing you do, and it creates that high of I've lost that weight. I weighed myself this morning. I lost that weight. Or you get through the end of the day, you feel like you entered everything into my fitness pal just right. It
Mhm.
just feels so good. Get that hit. And but then the third of just you get the grief and loss of not being able to bond with maybe all the people you dieted with. Some people are more of the diet on themselves, but a lot of times with women, you diet with other women, that's what you talk about. And I had to really step away from those conversations. And then my husband, the conversations with him, and it created a riff. And I, I had to be careful not to go on that self-righteous side of like, I found this better way and I know better. And just having them see me clearly going through my own path, and then just be an example of any way that they could see that I'm becoming happier. Of course, at the beginning, it did not seem happy. I was also binging a lot. I had to let that binging get itself out, and then it fizzled out. That's actually how you let it go.
By
And
not
so,
focusing on it and by not trying to attack it, you just kind of let it
mhm,
go. Interesting.
yeah, you let yourself binge. It's called the honeymoon phase too. When you finally say, "I'm going to let myself eat all foods." That's what I call it with my clients, is that honeymoon phase where you really do let yourself have all the foods, and it's not going to last forever. It's a honeymoon phase. It's just like relationships, but becomes a higher level of a relationship with your body and your food once you've let yourself have all those Snickers bars. And for me, it was the peanut butter. And now it used to be my favorite food. I don't even enjoy it as much anymore. So
That's
it
me.
was a high calorie food.
That's me and potato chips. I used to love them, and then I actually was like, "Okay, let's actually taste the potato chips." And I'm like, they taste like chemicals. I'm not a super fan anymore,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And I can see that grief and loss there. I used to love those potato chips, and they gave me some kind of emotional hit. And now I'm like, oh, no more emotional hit from potato chips. Wah wah. Will you talk to us about how you eat now? So, two questions: how you eat now, and also how you work with clients and help them.
Yeah. So the intuitive eating, I like to there are the 10 principles of intuitive eating, and I'll mention a few of them, just kind of the more popular ones of kind of the main definition of intuitive eating is making peace with food. And that's number 3. I already talked about number 1 being rejecting diet culture. It really is starting from, I think the whole 10 principles grows into starting from foundation of mindset overhaul, like I've talked about. And it seems like you've talked about on this podcast is just rewiring our brains. And you really have, it's all about our mind. That's what is going on in there. And it then talks about challenging the food police. So we really have like these little sirens that go off in our head when we start to go to a potluck and we see everything and we're so nervous on even how to control ourselves. But it's um, all the way up till it does talk about exercise. They would call it joyful movement or exercising to feel the difference, and gentle nutrition is the last. But that's how everyone in the whole diet industry goes wrong is we start with the end. We start with gentle nutrition and
Interesting.
then we go backwards. And or at least or even just not at all. You're just given a plan and you do it, and then it's all good. And you'll if you lose the weight, that's awesome. You're part of the lucky few. But if you're not, oh, you're actually something's wrong actually still, even though we all know it's still just a lucky few, but it's not even lucky. It's just it's random. It does there who's to know that they don't have eating disorders, so they're actually really struggling with themselves and it's not sustainable. But we all just want to be happy, right? And so that's for intuitive eating. I do those 10 principles. My third pillar is the mindset overhaul. And I like to talk about that as far as an analogy of skiing, where you're so used to going down that same ski slope, now it's really smooth. This is what they talked about in my rehab center. It's really smooth, it's paved, not paved, it's what's it called? It's,
Slick.
um,
How's that?
it's like yeah, it's been groomed, that's what it is. So that ski slope has been groomed because as we know, it's the quickest way to the bottom. So our thoughts do that all the time. If I just let that person act that way towards me, it'll be fine. I'm just not going to create conflict. We're just going to go to the bottom and get to the lodge. Or in other ways, I'm not going to eat those Oreos, and that's going to quickly get down to the lodge of me just make sure I lost that pound for the week or whatever. We just go quickly. But with the mindset overhaul, we have to consciously know, okay, we're going to actually go this beaten path, and no one knew that this is actually the better path, but it is. And it's actually going to get us to this better lodge over here that we want. And it's going to take time as we go through it with our skis until it becomes more paved and grooved. And then it becomes our new quickest way to the bottom, quickest way to our solution. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. So choosing the uncomfortable road that leads to a different outcome. I like it. As we wrap things up, a reminder that the goal of this podcast is to program your brain to start instilling systems and habits into your daily life. And one of the habits that I'm hearing from Laura is well, so many good things. I've written down so many things. I think my favorite is um, your definition of binging as a beautiful sign that your body is wanting to help you and take care of you. What if you applied that, or what if our listeners applied that to whatever it is that you're struggling with, whether it's binge eating, fill in your habit that you want to change there. What if that is your body saying, wait a second, you need more rest, or wait a second, you need more freedom, or wait a second, you need more connection. What if those things in our life that are showing up for us are really God, life, universe, spirit's way of saying, wake up and look at this. So love that. Giveaway, two giveaways right now. Giveaway from our sponsor, Card Salad. Go to habitsforhumans.com and sign up for a free 7-day Eat Real Foods challenge. That's 7 days of recipes, done for you shopping list. Your meal planning is done for you for a week. And from Laura, will you talk to us about your free guide, the Beginner's Guide to Intuitive Eating?
Yes, it is I think it's great to just know I can give you this guide and you can learn from the beginning. It's just called my Beginner's Guide to Intuitive Eating. I go over 5 steps of really helping you do that. Instead of the whole 10 principles, I put it down to 5. Just do these 5 steps in 5 days, and you're gonna definitely find that road of intuitive eating, even if it feels overwhelming to you to
I
be
love it.
intuitive.
I love it. So go to latterdayintuitiveeating.com/beginner's guide. All these links are going to be in the show notes. So check those out wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching the video. And it'll be in the show notes. And check out all of Laura's giveaways. She's got also a free intuitive eating breakthrough session and a latter day intuitive eating 14-day workbook. With a discount offer there for you. So check out those in the show notes. And thanks for joining us, Laura. Thanks to our listeners as well. This is Habits for Humans, the podcast that teaches you how to program your brain to maximize your potential. Thank you in advance also for giving us a positive review. Thanks.